Hi everyone, welcome to today's show. I'm delighted to be joined by Howdie Mickoski, author, researcher, and spiritual explorer whose work challenges our perceptions of reality and invites us to question the very fabric of our existence. From the mysteries of ancient civilizations to the depth of consciousness, Howdie's insights urge us to empty the cave and awaken the spark within. His website is howdiemickoski.com. Howdy, howdy to you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, like I said, I've been chopping wood all day, so I feel it in my shoulders, but otherwise, the sun's finally out, so it's actually like warm in my kitchen now, so ready to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and it's warm here in London as well, so I'm feeling good. When the sun comes out, it's almost like everyone has this almost carnival spirit to them, especially where I am, where it's cold and miserable.
Exactly, especially in anywhere in the north. When you live in the north, when you go through a proper winter, you appreciate summer more
Oh,
than those like at the equator where it's kind of normal. This is and it's weird because people try to take advantage of the summer beyond what they should.
yeah, absolutely. And you're in Norway. Are you still in Norway? I think last time
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about then,
Yep.
probably more so. Howdy, thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. You are an unbelievable mind, unbelievable background and research that you've got into. I mean, it's real, just outside the matrix, outside the box, paradigm shifting stuff. And you were kind enough to share me a few chapters of your latest book, and it's called Empty the Cave, Awaken the Spark. And the first edition was called Exit the Cave. And so it's you were mentioning to me on the email thread that you were saying that this book you haven't really talked about this on podcasts before because it's new material, and you said it could either annoy or frighten the listeners, which I thought was really interesting. So before we went anywhere, I'd love to know, what you meant by that, because I thought that was kind of interesting.
Sure. But it's been a 25-year journey, right? Since I wrote my first book, um, on ancient Egyptian stuff back in 2001 or something, or 2002 when I wrote it. And I'm very fortunate to be where I am. I mean, it's a combination of intention. I had an extreme intention after after a serious depression and a lot of traumas in my late 90s. And I was just lucky enough to meet a Korean monk and spent a year with him. I got to spend a lot of time with native medicine men on their reserve and their sweat lodge. So that was kind of low. They were the building blocks for what's happened over the last 20 or 25 years. So when I wrote Exit the Cave in 2022, I had to almost simplify the material into one sort of idea. I had to foundation the idea that we live in a suffering pit. That this realm is a pit designed to trap you and suck your energy. But that's only one side of the work. There's a whole other side of it, which is what you actually have to be doing beyond seeing that the place is a trap. There is a massive amount of work which involves self-definition, true self-definition. And so the reason I said what I said was because this topic has been it's starting to get quite big now. You might reincarnation trap, soul trap. It's coming around all over the place. Exiting the matrix. You're seeing those terms everywhere now. But I'm noticing that it's picking up a ton of distortion. There is a massive amount of distortion because even though the material of the basic foundation, like what I would call exit the cave, that's being presented fairly well. But once you start going beyond that, everything gets simplified. Everything gets turned into sort of a new agey, wishful thinking. That you can just you can like will your way out, or you can force your way out, or you can will your way into total knowing, and that's not the way it is. And so this new book, it took me a while before I felt comfortable to write it, and it took me longer to write than I normally do
Mm.
because the material is it's so different than what anyone will expect coming to this subject. Um, but I'm seeing that this is starting to be turned into oddities, and I've done some interviews now over the last 5 or 6 months, and it's very hard to bring this material to people. So I keep trying, but I feel the book does it cleanly. This gets more challenging.
Mm. So with the first one, exit the caves. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in your words you were saying that this is the notion that we're in an AI-based simulated matrix created by an evil deity for the purpose of, harvesting our energy, that loose energy, to keep the simulation running. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, empty the cave is more about the recognizing that you, the self, are part of the projection too. So we're talking about the cave being Plato's cave, where the prisoners were there looking on the wall and they were seeing the shadows from the fire behind them, and they thought the shadows were real. That's what the kind of the metaphor we're using here. But I think, were you saying the empty in the cave is to realize that you are also the projection, you are also the illusion, and it's to kind of break away all the falsehoods that make up your own personal identity, which is the way to exit the matrix, exit the cave.
Right. Then there's the challenge, right?
Right.
The one of the ways it's been presented clearest was a guy named Gary Harmon, and he stated, if you treat the whole world as an illusion, but forget to include yourself in that illusion, you've made the classic spiritual mistake. And it was for me, it was the hardest thing to do was I spent 8 years testing reality. So I was able to break down reality and realize that reality is not real. It's a transparent mirage, but I was real. And it wasn't until I had my death experience in the canyon in 2005 until, oh yeah, right, I'm as fake as reality. So then the question had to start becoming, well, what is real then? What is actually truthfully real if now I've seen the material world is not, and even this thing, the including the thoughts, the feelings, the experience, all of it. Okay, what is real? And that was a cleaning part of the deep self-definition, which was finding out, okay, what is the real part of yourself? And it gets, you can call it, so being called now divine spark. It's being called, I use Sleeping Beauty as an example of, but even that is still, it's still just language.
Mm.
And it's you have to put it in more of like terms of awareness. But the problem is, and then I'll shut up and let you talk, is so many people say, oh, what you present is so negative.
Mm.
And actually, it's not. What I'm presenting, I feel, is unbelievably positive because I'm trying to take people to the complete truth of what you are, the complete truth of the totality of this place. But the problem is there are so many distortion walls, so many lies that have covered everything we've ever known from like the second we've, in a sense, manifested as an awareness almost, that you have to tear down all those walls first. And tearing down all the walls is very, very difficult. It's very painful. It's a reason very few people do the work because that's so difficult to do. But the end result is once you tear down the walls, then you can see clearly. So actually, I think my message is quite positive. But to get to the positive part, you have to break through a lot of these distortion walls, which are not fun to go through.
I like that. So those distortion walls, what are they framing then? What is that objective realm, would you say?
Could you reframe the question?
Yeah, sorry, let me say that again. So you're saying about tearing down the walls, or another way of looking at that is pulling back the curtain. I've heard people talk about in terms of the
Yeah,
Matrix or Wizard of Oz or whatever, right? So,
yeah.
what does that undistorted, objective reality look like? Is there one or not?
Again, I can, like everything I say, I can only speak from my own experience, and I try to be very careful that everything I do and say and present is something I've experienced. It's not,
Mm.
and well, yeah, I've read some things and some
Yeah.
things I've cross-referenced. If I haven't had the experience, I don't talk about it. I have to feel that you have to. So, what I'm sharing is my experience and my thesis, and I'm sharing it so other people can think. First of all, I don't want people to necessarily believe what I say because my experience was the experience that happened here, right?
Mhm.
But the challenge becomes once you start to see that one way or another, reality is not what you thought it was. Like that's people talk about. I've had they say, oh, there's a great awakening happening in the world right now, and they'll ask me that. What do you think about the great awakening? There's no great awakening happening. And they get very upset with me, right? Because, oh no, don't you see all these people? No, some people are having realizations. Some people are finally starting to see that things aren't what they've always thought they were. And some people are starting to get personally, their comfort level is being disturbed. So they're asking some serious questions, which they never asked before. But a true awakening is when the aftermath of that realization, because it's not an experience, you no longer identify with what you identified before. So before an awakening, you'd identified as a person with a name who lived in a particular country, who had these experiences, who has these thoughts and feelings. But after an awakening, literally the identity has shifted to something else. You may not know exactly what it is, but you know it's no longer that.
Mm.
And that's why and there's more, it's happened to more people than anyone might think. Also known as a realization of emptiness. This can happen to quite a few people, but if you're not ready for it, if you're not prepared for that, it will be a very, very difficult experience. And
Mhm.
I would say a lot of people, or not a lot, many people who are walking around the streets pushing shopping carts and talking to themselves, quite likely could have been people with an honestly true, deep mystical experience, but didn't have a mind ready to handle it. They hadn't got their house in order. They hadn't got their mind clear and stable before such would happen. So when they came back, their mind couldn't handle the experience. They had no one around them who could help them explain what the experience was, and they just sunk into extreme distortion. So it's another reason I come and talk about this stuff is to let people know that this could be in your future. Something like that, a realization of emptiness could actually happen. There's a reason that you go to Zen monasteries for 2 and 3 years to do a whole lot of very hard, seemingly tedious work.
Mm.
It's just to prepare the body and the mind to have it in such a foundational state that then should the universe open the door, the universe can, you as a physical mental being can handle the realization.
Mm, great, thank you for that. So, would I be right in saying then that there is no objective reality then? It's just a subjective, pure, still unchanging awareness for each individual point of attention.
Yeah, become once you begin to see that everything is on one level of projection,
Mm,
including yourself, it's all a projection. Then it becomes this, and it's not to be denied. That you hear that's very popular now, especially with something called New Advaita, right? Advaita is an ancient Indian tradition, but in the last 30 or 40 years, it's become kind of the new flavor of the month, Neo Advaita, in which a lot of people travel around and tell people there's nothing to do. You don't have to do anything. Just sit around, drink your tea. It doesn't matter if people are being abused and destroyed and things are being blown up. Haha. That's kind of the message. And bizarrely, it's not totally false. There is truth in the message, but it's like it's a part of truth of a much bigger truth. And that's where one of the challenges comes is you have to deal with the experience. You have to deal, let's put it this way, how to give the metaphor the best way to describe it. One of the things of awakening is like is you've always been you always know you've been or you didn't know, but you've been a character. You see, you've been a character in a stage production in a giant play going on. All of a sudden, you have this awakening, and now you're in the audience watching the play. The thing that everyone that isn't presented very well, because it takes a long time to understand, is just because your awareness is in the theater watching the play, the character, the Howdy thing, is still on the stage and it's still going on in its production. And it needs to continue the production. You
mm,
can't try to take the character out of the show because then the show certain things are not going to happen that's supposed to happen in the show. So it's bizarre that you have to now all of a sudden you move back to an awareness where you're realizing, oh yeah, it's a show, but the show has to continue to go on, and I have to know my character to such incredible degrees. That's why actual self-definition starts with knowing this thing. You
mm,
have to know who you are first. You can't start saying, "Oh, I'm an illusionary being," or someone said, I'm just a projection, so it doesn't matter." No, you have to get to know this thing so well because if you ever get to a point where you see something different about yourself in reality, well, the more you know the character, so you more you can let the character, in a sense, be a kind of the robot it's supposed to be in this reality, the easier reality actually gets to be in.
mm,
And a lot of people forget that. They're always trying, even when they step outside of this, they decide, I don't like my character. I don't like what my character's done. I want my character to be different. And so they'll fight things for 10 or 15 years. I went through 10 years of supreme illness after I had my experience, like to the point of I thought I was going to die 2 or 3 times, like that bad. And it took me a long time before I could finally just say, I'm a different character. I have a character that I'm supposed to play. It's not what I want it to be. It's something else a little different. Just do that. And I wouldn't be able to be doing this stuff now if I hadn't, about 10 years ago, started to make that switch and say, it's time to stop being what I want to be. It's time to start being, in a sense, what's supposed to be here, what was manifested in this place, and stop fighting it. And things started to get easier, and all of a
Mm,
sudden, books started coming out, interviews started happening, and it's because I stopped trying to force a will onto the world and started to just say, let the character on stage be the character on stage. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's another thing that's thrown around too much is like you need to perfect yourself, right? This religious idea. God won't talk to you unless you're perfect and wonderful and loving.
mm,
And actually the opposite is true. You might say whatever you want to call God or truth will talk to you when you're being honest, the way you actually and truly are. If you can be truthful and honest the way you are, bizarrely then, and you may be, I can be a bit of an asshole sometimes, no question. That's in my character. I was a hockey coach for 10 years. You better learn how to be an asshole. You're going to handle situations. But it's just a mask. You put it on when you need it. You take it off. It's not like you keep it all
yeah.
the time. The more you learn how to be honest in your day-to-day dealings with reality, the more reality is going to start showing you honestly things back.
Yeah, I love that. Because I know that trap you're talking about is you hear this a lot in the personal development world. You say, um, become the greatest version of yourself. So everyone's always striving to be something that they're not quite there yet, and they're still arriving. They still haven't got there yet. They're still reaching to that place, and if that place never actually comes, it's a bit of a carrot on the end of a stick, isn't it? But I think the
Yeah.
opposite end of that is the other alternative, which is just be yourself, and that's fine, you know. And then you have people just sitting in their mum's basement eating Cheetos every day, playing video games, and they're not actually striving for anything. So it's for me, it's a bit of a blend of the both. It's becoming yourself, but at no point
Right.
just settling for what you have, right? I think it's a sort of in between.
Yeah, it's a good way of presenting it that again, there's always all these distortions, right? Things that
Yeah.
sound useful at the beginning, but
Mm,
if you follow them out, like you say, you'll just be walking around in circles. You're just
yeah.
digging deeper into the record groove and going actually going nowhere. And those are two of the general problems. One is there's something wrong with me and I need to fix it. And since I don't know what it is, I'd better start going to everyone I possibly know to find every teacher, every book, every whatever to find out what's wrong with me so I can fix it. That's one side. That tends to never end. There's value in that because you do have to get to know yourself and you do have to get to start seeing
Mm,
what can I start shifting in myself from the standpoint of energy? Because if we've got we use energy in our day-to-day basis. B, we find out we have these beings that are stealing our energy, these demonic
mm,
forces that are constantly stealing our energy. Well, if we want to actually get somewhere in anything, it doesn't matter whether you want to be a golf pro or you want to know the truth of the universe, you need energy as a being on the path to do it. So step one is starting to learn, how do I start storing energy? How do I start gaining energy? How do I start using my energy? So that's one side of it. Then, like you say, then there's the other side where people just tell, oh, there's nothing to do. Don't worry about it. Sit down. It doesn't matter what's happening.
mm,
And all that happens is, again, somebody just gets in a rut. Now, there is a time for that. The problem is that is a true statement at an exact particular time on the path when the seekers kind of worn themselves out. They've done what they can do, and they're standing at the mountain saying, "I still can't get to the top. I've done it all." That's that's the right time potentially to stop. If you stop before that, you haven't tired out the seeker, and like you say, you're just going to kind of, in a sense, waste the possibilities of this existence before
mm.
something might happen.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's my friend Darren DOG talks about you mentioned about going around in circles, that he would say that's the feminine shape of just accepting circumstances as they are, but not trying to change anything. And he says the masculine energy is more like a line. So if you're going in a straight line, you're always going to be creating new change. It never comes back on itself. But it's to actually integrate those two dynamics together. So you're not just a
Yeah,
feet
I
forward,
I
not
would
just
put
a
it like this.
backward.
I would describe it as a circular path that goes forward. So rather than a
Yeah.
circle that makes a complete circle, it kind of like it's a
Well,
spiral that
well,
goes
exact. I was going to
and
finish
kind
off, but I was
yeah,
just
and
about to
moves
say,
itself up.
yeah,
So
it's a
there's like a
spiral, is what I was coming
return
to.
yet
Yeah.
movement, a return yet movement. It's
Yeah.
the metaphor of the labyrinth is so powerful, and it
Yeah.
unfortunately gets mixed up too because part of the the one that people talk about is the spiraling inward to the center of the labyrinth, right?
Yeah.
Going past the Minotaur, learning all about and getting to this calm place in the center of the labyrinth.
Mm.
They forget, though, existence isn't meant to be lived at the middle of a labyrinth. You have to spiral back out. And
Yes. Exactly.
spiraling back out can be much as more difficult even than the spiraling in, which is why a lot will spiral in. They'll get to that center point
Mm.
and then they stay there. They get on a lawn chair, they
Mm.
get their cup of tea, and they say, I'm done. Start running lectures and having retreat weekends.
Yeah.
But actually, for the totality, you've got to spiral back out. And
Yeah.
yeah, the spiraling back out because you got to see everything again, your whole
Yes.
existence again from a totally different angle. And it's where the recapitulation for me anyway, I would say is so valuable. Like to have fully recapitulated your life. It took me 4.5 years
Mm.
of intense effort. But at the end of that process, when I had seen, we'll call it the underlying foundations of the life that was lived, it changes everything. It changes everything. So it's one of those things that nobody really does, but for the few that have done it, they'll all say one of the greatest things we've ever achieved in this life.
What is so it's to spiral back out, you mean? What after spiraling in?
Well, a life recapitulation is to, in a sense, relive every moment of your life,
Mm.
but not mentally. That's where people get they try to they remember it mentally, like the way you would talk to a psychologist, as
Mm.
opposed to re-experiencing your
Mm.
life as the being that was in it. So not like seeing it separate and watching it like on a movie, like literally reliving it all again inside the body, looking out, sensing out the body, and seeing all that you missed when you from the experiences that you really had, and then seeing all the experiences you've forgotten about, all the experiences that you buried away, all the things when
Oh,
all of that gets revealed and you see the totality of your life, the way it actually was, the way you really were, the way others really were, there becomes like a giant I don't want to call it a cleansing because people will give it a wrong
mm.
idea of what I'm talking about, but it's like energetically all this stuff that was holding the past together, all that energy just drops away and it becomes like available all of a sudden now. It's like all this stuff that was holding a rock behind me in place. The rock just went away from finishing the recap. And now I'm like, okay, I've got this energy. I can literally blast off into anything I want to do, and then that's the point. Well, you better have a pretty good intention because you better know where you want to put that energy.
Yeah, because the rocket launching. So it's like
Yeah.
kind of a refeeling of trauma from the past, circumstances from the past. That you're not
It's
actually going
literally
out there.
it's literally everything. You're
Right.
literally remembering the boring dinner you had with your sister at this particular
Oh,
restaurant and whatever. One of the key elements of the recapitulation is if you do it well, it will reveal that your life is just a giant concentric series of repeating patterns and repeating loops. Like literally, you'll be able to see. When I did my recapitulation, at times I made myself sick. I saw, as an example, that I went on 4 dates when I was this about I'm about 27 or 28. I went on the exact same date with the four girls. We went to the same restaurant. We walked on the same canal. We sat on the same bench. I talked about most of the same things. Like I literally was not even unique enough to come up with like one new idea. It was the exact same thing over and over. And of course, none of them went anywhere. Why? Because I was literally like a walking robot. And when I saw this, I was like, why at the time wouldn't I have seen this? Like, why did it take me
mm,
10 years in the future to finally look back and say, this is a really stupid way of living. But
mm,
this is a part of what the recap is showing you. It just is, and you'll see that you'll have looping patterns of days, weeks, literally years. You'll have like 10-year looping patterns that just keep going again and again and again. It's bizarre. And so that's part of what that process, at least for me, it revealed all of this. And I could kind of say, oh, yeah, I don't need to have those loops. I don't need to have this stuff. I can literally just allow it all to go.
mm,
And you can start just choosing something brand new every moment you're living it.
mm. Yeah, when you're talking about that, it kind of reminded me of, for me. what that looping looks like is heartbreak. So, and I know you
Oh, yeah.
mentioned this as well, but I've had situations where I've gone out with a girl, fallen in love, and then she's broken my heart, and it's completely
Mm,
shattered me, completely destroyed me. And then from that, I've developed myself and trying to alchemize that into some positive message. And then I've gone away and done that. And then it's almost like the universe brings in another stage character to break my heart again, and it forces
right.
me to sort of recognize that. And I think what it is, it's like on a needle on a record, and it keeps hitting that same glitch on the record on the vinyl, and I think it's trying to encourage me to go inwards and find out what that core wound.
Exactly, right. There's that underlying
Yeah,
principle, that underlying something that keeps the record running.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, what is that? Right? Like, and you start unraveling that to the point of like literally, you're asking like, well, something thinks this is a good idea to keep doing this over and over again. What is it?
mm,
Is it even because when we really start to examine thought, if you start, that's another really important one, is examining your thoughts. And when you start watching your thoughts carefully, you start to realize, I did anyway, most of my thoughts weren't mine. That they literally were not being generated they were being generated from some external source. And a woman I know, really interesting woman, Amara Strand, she told me in a conversation a couple of years ago, she described a lot of our thought as if she said metaphorically we have like an antenna on the top of our head,
yeah,
and the universe or the matrix or whatever you want to call this reality is blasting out like a hive mind signal of thought. And if your antenna is just up and you're just receiving it, then you'll be like the average population who will just take in whatever the main thought is
mm,
on many different levels, and it'll come in and you'll think it's your thought. She said all you have to do for a while is feel that antenna dropping into your mind so that it's stopped at the top of your head and see what happens. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. I'm always willing to try any science experiment. I tried it, thoughts were gone.
oh
Like
wow,
they were gone. And it wasn't until I kind of just play, well, let's put the antenna back up, and all of a sudden here come thoughts again. And it was like, and I started to realize, yeah, how many thoughts do we really have that are honest, genuine thought, and how much is actually coming from some other source, one way or another, designed to put us into energy stealing situations. So, bringing this back to what you just said,
yeah,
so if I were suggesting to you, if you wanted to look into your heartbreak story,
mm,
part of what that recapitulation process would be is before you actually, when you're in like the day before you meet the new girl, for example, it would be like, what are the thoughts going in your mind?
mm,
What are the thoughts that are, in a sense, setting up almost the scenario that's going to happen the next day, that's going to begin the process again? Can you find those origin thoughts, whatever they are, and then verify, are they from John? Or are they from some external source? Are they from some entity? Are they some whatever? Because as soon as you start to find that, hey, these thoughts are not mine, they're not actually, they have nothing to do with the character known as me, they become very easy to start ignoring. As long as someone is treating like, when someone is put into a meditation and say, oh, you're supposed to not pay attention to your thought and be still. Well, the
mm,
problem is they believe those thoughts are there. So why should I should be listening to the thought because it's me talking to me. It might be something
mm,
important there, right? But if you start saying, well, it's garbage. It's literal garbage. So it's easy to just turn it off. You don't need to be in meditation. You just, hey, wait a minute. 99% of my thought is going to be garbage anyway. Why am I listening to it? And when there will be a different kind of thought. The only way I can describe it, um, it's a different presentation package than regular thought. And I know when that shows up, and it comes up like the way it did in my experience, more like complete clusters of information. When that comes up, I know that that's honest and true. I pay attention. Whatever that tells me, I pay attention to that 100%. But the other stuff, that's just trying to spin me in some goofball location. And I'm like,
yeah,
and the more you see that, the actual easier it is to turn your back. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to attack it. You don't have to do any of those things. You just turn your back on it. You just like ignore it. And eventually they get bored, they go away.
really. That's so interesting because I've had that where I kept looping like the thoughts and the email, the last email that I wrote to her, and it was going around like I had to think about it 100 times a day, you know.
Mm.
And it's just that
Yeah,
can't be what my body wants. That can't be what my psyche wants. It's clearly trying to keep me on that kind of suffering, traumatic loop, like a broken record.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You want to be like a duck. You ever seen two ducks on a lake when they get into a little fight, something,
Oh,
and they get out there and they go at each other for like 2 or 3 seconds,
right.
and then they stop. They just get and they just swim away and they go off, and it's like they dealt with whatever they had to deal with, and then it's done. It's over.
Mm.
We, however, have this little experience for 3 seconds, and then we hold on to it for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing of how the human mental structure has been, how these parasitic entities have gotten into our energy structure, that they built these things that are designed to, all they need to do, for example, is to get me and you to have a small little fight right now. That's all they would need.
Mm.
And then they know we would never need to talk again the rest of our lives. But for the next 10 years, we'll beat ourselves up of why did I say this? Why did I
Yeah.
act this way? Or that guy's an asshole. Why? And it's like, that's all they literally needed was this little event. And then we will torture ourselves for the next decades. And
Oh, yeah.
that becomes one of the big switching points when we can take events as events that happened or needed to happen or didn't happen or happened the way they are, and then learn how to drop them. Just like it's hot coal. You just drop it, it's done. It's gone. That's that's what the entities don't like that,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's they're not getting any energy from that.
That's so incredible when you say that. It's like, yeah, 5 second event, or let's just say a 5 minute event or whatever, like
Yeah.
some very small event, but the payoff is maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years of from that. I mean, from their point of view, that's an incredible crypto investment, isn't it? Like passive income on that one.
Right. And that's what we have to understand we're up against.
Mm,
That's what we have to understand, that this is not, this was a key part of Exit the Cave. And it was something that it took me 20 years to finally, of work, to finally recognize that, oh yeah, this place is a suffering pit of hell.
mm,
And it's been built to be a suffering pit of hell. We get tricked to think, oh no, a loving God created this place, a loving God cares about you.
mm,
And it's just in a bit of error. And if you just go out and put all of your energy and work hard and fix it for God, everything will be fine again. And somebody puts in 10 years of their work, then they get exhausted and they can't do anything anymore. And nothing ever happens. The world keeps getting worse. Once I realized that this place is built to be this way, it's built to be insane, and it will never get better. It will never improve.
mm,
The shift can happen from, I don't need to make the insane reality sane. All that needs to happen is this thing to be sane. All I have to do is choose personal sanity every moment, and it doesn't matter what reality does. Reality can do whatever the hell it wants. But now this thing here is sane. This thing here is still. This thing here is balanced. That's the goal. And once you're in that kind of place, you realize you can start having impact with a few people around you, with a small community,
mm,
with a small little group that's around you. That seems to have power, where then small groups can lift themselves up. But as soon as it's like, now I'm going to save the world, now I'm going to fix everybody, now
mm,
I'm going to fix this place, you're back into the energy sucking draw of it. And if you just recognize where that energy can have value, then all of a sudden you can actually you can actually you can actually have a lot of things that are transformative. But it's just natural, right? It's natural. You see something is insane, and the natural message from children is that things are not supposed to be insane, so something's wrong. So when something's wrong, the next natural tendency is, how do I fix it? But once you realize, oh wait a minute, it was built to be insane. So trying to change it is like trying to change a video game about golf into a video game about car chases. It's not going to happen. That's not what the video game was built to be designed as.
mm.
And once I got that, that's when I could not only write Exit the Cave, but that's when I could start getting comfortable to start being able to share what became Empty the Cave, because I realized I'm not trying to fix the place anymore, but there's maybe 20 or 30 people who might read this book and
Mm.
really be able to do something with it. And so I'm okay. I can share it with them.
Yeah, lovely. So, you know that sanity in the insane world, is that what you would refer to as the divine spark?
Um, no, a divine spark is, and this is a Gnostic term,
Mm,
basically. It was never actually used in the Nag Hammadi documents. For the most famous Gnostic text, it was described in there as like a piece of Sophia. That's how it was originally described. So it already has a feminine
mm,
edge to it. The Cathars had a different kind of edge to how they described it. But um, if I would simplify how I see a divine spark, when this matrix was first designed by fallen creator, demiurge, whatever you want to call it, the story, whether you get it from the Cathars or the Gnostics or various, even from the Mayans in the Popol Vuh and certain native Indian mythology, the this creation didn't live. It existed, but there was no life to it. So one way or another, this creator had to go back outside to the original realm, in Gnostic terms, the pleroma, and get a life force to come in here and make the creatures move. That life force is symbolically known as a divine fire or celestial fire. So once the fire came in, whether it was tricked to come in, when it was asked to come in, whether, whatever the story was of how it actually came in symbolically. Once it was in, though, the demiurge made an interesting trick. The demiurge split that divine fire into hundreds of thousands or maybe a few million sparks. Because remember, a spark is a beginning point of a fire. It's a very tiny fire.
mm,
And that's what we have. So, what I'm calling a divine spark is, first of all, a tiny piece of the original celestial fire. And then each of those divine sparks were, in a sense, placed in a coma. So, that divine spark was placed into a coma and then taught to project a reality for itself to find its way back to its source, but it's been taught to go into the projection, not back into the source of what it would actually be. So it's why I use the metaphor of the fairy tale Sleeping Beauty, because that's really the story of Sleeping Beauty is the story of the divine spark. Sleeping Beauty, the feminine half of the divine fire, was put to sleep and is projecting a reality. And the job of this thing, which won't wake. This is the strange part of all this, right? Howdy Mickoski never wakes up. The divine spark will wake up. Howdy Mickoski is just a character that the divine spark is interacting with to see if it can get done what it needs to do back there. And so, in the metaphor of the Sleeping Beauty story, Sleeping Beauty needs a prince to come and awaken her up. But she doesn't want any prince. She doesn't want any jackass just walking around. She wants one with integrity and honesty and clarity and wisdom. And so you're building a particular type of being that the divine spark wants to wake up to. Once the divine spark can awaken, this sleeping beauty, now there can all of a Sleeping Beauty can start interacting more with the character. She's not in a coma anymore. Now she there's a projection, but she can sense. So this thing will get easier. But Sleeping Beauty back here can also begin that true journey back to the original source, back to a place called home.
mm. So would you say it's been moved from that original home into this kind of simulacra, this kind of fake reality, or does it coexist in both? It's like a part of the divine spark is in both realities simultaneously.
Um, yes and no. It's so hard to
Mm,
talk about it because
mm,
again, I don't know for sure. This is just how it feels to me, right?
mhm,
But um, the divine spark is, um, let's put it this way. It knows that it's missing. It knows that it's missing its home. And I talk about this in the new book where the force of nostalgia is one of the great actual spiritual powers you possess. We have three main emotions, which is fear, seduction, and um, nostalgia.
mhm,
This was presented by a teacher I really like, Richard Rose. Fear is obvious. We're afraid of something, and so we're trying to protect ourselves from it. Seduction is there's something outside of ourselves that we want. Nostalgia is a strange thing because usually nostalgia is presented as somebody remembering a time of their childhood
Mm,
that they really want to go back to, or something that was wonderful, a Christmas that they liked, a birthday that they liked,
mm,
school that they liked. But if you look at the nostalgia, what's also interesting is nostalgia breaks away all the stuff that wasn't so good. You know, that Christmas, everything at that Christmas wasn't great. There was also a fight that happened at that Christmas, and but you've chopped all that away and you've just kept the sort of the beautiful part of it. So that's kind of similar. That feeling that we have, oh, I'd love to go back and be 8 years old. That's the feeling that the divine spark has for this place I classify as home. That nostalgia you think you have for your life is really the nostalgia of the deepest you having for the thing that is not false, which is outside the matrix. And this is another thing that's very hard for people to grasp. Only that which is true can exit the matrix. Nothing false can exit the matrix. The story of in the New Testament of having to go through the eye of a needle, that's what it's describing. Anything false will block you from that. And so I've seen recently, I mean, this topic is ever exit the matrix.
mm,
And if you go and listen to some of this or read some of
mm,
this, it usually involves how to improve yourself in the world somehow. So how to fix the government, or how to live in, or you need to go live in the woods, or you need to change this about yourself, or you need to become a vegetarian, or you need to you need to whatever. There's all of these things that to exit the matrix, it's somehow you are going to be benefited. But the thing that is doing all the work is also false. So you're putting in all of the effort into something that's false as opposed to putting the effort into that which is true. Because again, anything false is from the matrix, can never leave it. But
mm.
what is true can't potentially leave it. And that it's that shift of awareness from saying, I'm placing the majority of my focus on that thing which is the deepest awareness of what I am. And the other stuff is I pay attention to it as it needs to be paid attention to, but no more than is necessary. That's part of the switch that has to happen, but I see that that doesn't happen out there. It's the opposite.
People are adding more layers of BS to themselves in the hope that they're going to
This is a
become
place
better.
of distortion. Yeah,
Yeah.
and this place just wants you to hook into it. It doesn't matter whether you like something, whether you hate
Mm,
something, if you love it, if you want this, if you don't want that. As long as the attention is there, this place has you. It doesn't want you to put the attention here. And again, back to that, I don't need to make sanity out there. I just need to create sanity here. That's all. I
mm,
don't need to have stillness out there. That'd be great. But how do you create the stillness here? That the focus is always in this spot, because that's another interesting thing. You won't awaken 10 years in the future. You'll awaken now. And if
mm.
it does happen 10 years in the future, it's also happened now. So why not just awaken now? Why wait?
That's interesting that you say, yeah, why wait if you can just do it
Why
now?
wait?
Yeah,
Do it now.
it's the present
Yeah.
moment only, right? So
Mm.
can I ask them where are you at in that journey then? Because are you saying then that when someone, and when I mean someone, I'm not talking to you as Howdy Mickoski, the identity, the person. I'm talking to your divine spark, let's say the origins of you.
And
If have you exited the matrix, but are you still as Howdy still existing here, or are you still on that journey to cut away and subtract all the falsehoods
mm,
to then leave? Where are you at your in your own personal
yeah,
journey?
if the character's still here,
Yeah.
the exiting of the matrix is not complete.
Oh, okay.
Exiting of the matrix means exiting the matrix,
Mm,
not having a better time, not having an easier life, not living in the forest. I mean, literally, it means shutting off the dream completely. It's over. That's so from that perspective, um, both Divine Spark and the character Howdy are still doing some work and there's still seemingly work that needs to be done. And so there's still things that need to be shared. So I'm still working through all of that.
mm,
I should point out that somebody would often, or I get this question a lot, well, why don't you just kill yourself? then if you want to just get out of the matrix, why don't you just kill yourself?
It's a bit harsh.
And the problem with that is with that kind of thinking is usually that comes from I am suffering. And so if I end the experience of the body, the suffering will end. The problem is that's not really true. Once you begin to see how the afterlife is structured and how the reincarnation cycle is structured, all that will happen is you might get a tiny break, but you're going to get recycled back in and you might get in a much worse situation. However bad you think it is now, the next one or the other one or the redo in your life, because I think I've also had these experiences of parallel lives and looping lives where I've seen
Mm.
hundreds of thousands of Howdie Mickoski lives. So you might get the next one way worse. And so the point being is, you know, you're going to die anyway. And I know a lot of people are really suffering. And one of we can talk about empathy and the importance of having empathy coming up, but the thing is that you've got the possibility, like we talked about, of doing something now. And so why take that away when you can actually put in another day, another week, do some more work, do some more practice, do another exercise. You don't know. It might just be one more practice that you need. It might be just one more exercise. And this message of, I'll just get rid of the suffering, get over with it. Literally, that might be something that, again, one of these thoughts that you're really close and is trying to get you to stop. So the message always is, it's going to happen anyway, a lot faster than I think it's going to happen. And so, while there's the ability to do time and work and have understanding, then you just do it. You just put in what you can put in and see where you wind up at the end. Because even if then you put in 20 years of hard
Mm.
work, don't awaken, and it will happen at death. I almost guarantee it. Some people they won't awaken, they won't have this total realization until the moment they die. But even if it doesn't happen at the moment you die, I would think somebody who had worked hard their whole life at trying to understand their existence and themselves, which what better thing could there be to try to do in reality? Then at the very least they could say, well, it didn't happen, but you know what? I gave it a good shot. I gave it a really good work this time. And so I'm okay with how life went. I think that's all of that when you package that together is the right mental state going forward, which is you've got another day. How can you use it one way or another for your long-term advantage?
And so that advantage then is that at the point of death, are you saying there's some kind of not trial, but where you're given a memory of your life and you're meant to think, oh, I didn't do that and I could have done that a little bit better. And then you're seduced into returning back into this realm and correcting it, but just looping back into that same pattern again. Is that kind of the thinking? But you're saying spend a bit more time on Earth to undo the karma that might be inflicted upon you in that point of that
Yeah.
trial later on after death. Is that right? And so you're
Yeah.
free from that, and then you can make a much more balanced decision of where would you go at that point as well?
In my opinion, again, always
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah.
in my opinion, um, if you get to the after death state and you're dealing with the white light and you're dealing with the life review and it's too late.
Hmm.
It's already too late. That work has to be done now. You can't wait. You can't wait till after you're dead and think you're going to do the work. That's like I say, if you really look into this, the usual method of what you need to do is either wish your way out, oh, I'm sovereign or I'm whatever, and I make my own decisions. That's one side. Or there's all these rules of how you're going to go through the astral realm and what you're going to do and how you're going to bypass this. No, you have to have complete self-definition. You have to not just know what you are,
Hmm.
not just have realized what you are, you have to become what you are. That's that's the switch. It's not just enough to know it, you have to become it. And once you have become the truth of your being, which is not actually emptiness, but it's a part of it, well, what can contain nothing? Only something can be trapped,
Hmm.
right? Something can be trapped in a room. How can anyone trap nothing? Now, nothing is not what people think it is. It's no thing. It's a completely different concept. It's just that's a word. to try to describe a massive experience, which normally the ego turns around into something very negative and very frightening, and it's actually not. But that's the switch, going from the identification of something to the identification of at least nothing that is matrix generated. It's a massive shift, and it can't be understood by language. It won't be understood in the book if you read it. Even the point is that, but maybe it's in the back of your head. If you read the book and you say, I kind of sort of understand what he means by that. I think I can kind of get that. But if it ever happens to you, then all of that stuff can literally just can come to the front and say, oh, now I know what he's talking about. Because when it happened to me in 2005, when I fell into a river by a canyon and had a complete death experience where I realized don't exist, um, I came out of that and there was very little written about it. There was very few teachers. My Korean teacher had already died, and I was very lost for quite a while because I didn't know what to do with it. And one of the key elements is you have to integrate. You literally have to almost like sink out of the world for 6 months and just kind of like, what does this mean? What does this even, how do I function? And in my case, I walked back in the world very, very quickly, and a lot of distortion happened, and I got, with the best of intentions, created a lot of problems. And all of a sudden, didn't took me 15 to 20 years to finally be able to honor what was there in the experience. So another reason I'm writing this is not because I think, hey, someone's going to read my book and they're going to have an experience of emptiness tomorrow. No, but if it ever happened and something like my book or some of these other books were available to you, then you might have a better idea. Oh, this is what maybe happened to me, and here's what I should do now. Here's the best way of going forward. Had I done things in a better way back then, things would have, the process would have been much more smooth. I might have gone through a year of difficulty rather than 10 or 20. The flip side of it, though, is because I went through such intense difficulty,
Mm.
I can talk about it now with other people. And I can see it when somebody else has had a realization of emptiness, or they talk to me about it and they tell me some stuff, and I'm just like, oh boy, the next few years is going to be rough for you. I can't say it to them, but oh, it's going to be tough. Maybe in 3 years they'll get back in touch with me, and we'll be able to navigate something, because um, if I put it in a metaphor, it's the best way I can describe it. So when I had my experience, it's like the light shone on a part of the screen to totality. I saw 100% truth of this part of the screen. The problem is the screen, of course, is holographic. So any part is also the whole. So I saw this, but I believed I saw all of this, truthfully. I believed I got the 100% package when I really got this. And that's how you can get tricked. You think you've seen everything, as opposed to, no, I've just seen this. All this is still unseen yet, and there's work to do, and that's one of the first steps. It leads to being, in Zen terms, drunk on emptiness, right? Is one of the terms they like to use, where you think you've got it all, and it seems like you do, until you start living it out and you realize, no, it's not working. And it's not working because you didn't take the time to sit back and honestly say, what just happened? It's partially what happens in the monastery, right? You're there in the monastery to do the work to potentially have such an experience. And then if it does, you stay in the monastery for a while so the older monks can watch over you and kind of keep you from getting too far off track,
Mm.
so that you can navigate your pathway a little better. There's a before and there's an after, and both of them, and there's work to both of them. And it's easy in the after state to try to rush through it, or pretend there isn't anything there, or pretend you're really special. That was another one.
Mm.
I went through it. Everybody goes through it.
Mm.
I'm now special and important because I had this experience. I just found out I don't exist, but I'm special and important because I found out I don't exist. Logically it's insane, but of course you believe it. And it took quite a while and quite a lot of difficult things to kind of realize, oh yeah, not special at all, not at all.
Really?
Uh, I've maybe learned how to speak in a very grounded, very calm way about these subjects, but that's about it. That's
Could
nothing.
it be the case that you're special and not special simultaneously, like the two, it's like the paradox of life, like you're empty and full at the same time. You're special and not special. You're the individual and the collective, totality and nothingness altogether.
Yeah, again, I'm so lucky I had my time with Mr. Park. I didn't fully understand all of what he was doing or what he was saying or the crazy things that were going on when we were there, but he was individually pushing us into so many levels, so many layers, so many ways. One story from Empty the Cave, Exit Cave, I like to talk about with Mr. Park that sums up what it was like. These German girls came from Germany. He was living in Hawaii at this time. We were out there visiting, and so they came all the way from Germany. They don't have a lot of money. They're young. They're in their early 20s. They've heard about this monk and they want to go spend time with him. So they come into the house. He comes out of his room and they introduce themselves. He's like, hi, I'm Ingrid from Germany. And Mr. Parker starts screaming at her, Germany, all of you, Hitler, all of you, evil, all of you should be killed, all of you are evil, Hitler. And then he just went back in his room. And we were like, wow, these girls are now like, well, we can't stay here with the crazy guy. Like, what do? We come all this way. We don't really have any money. Like, so they went down to a coffee shop to try to figure out what to do.
Mm.
And of course, they're young and good looking. So the guys started hitting on them, right? And of course, at some point, the same girl introduces herself, hi, I'm Ingrid from Germany. And she realized she bowed her head. She was bowing her head in such a way like, please don't hate me because I'm from Germany. Back they came to the house, called Mr. Park back out of the room. This time the girl, she was strong and just went, hi, I'm Ingrid from Germany. And then Mr. Park shook her hand and, hi, welcome to Hawaii. Like right from the first second with him, he was not going to play around with you. Whatever bullshit you were going to throw at him, he was going to throw right back at you. And that's what it was like constantly with him. You were on edge. On one hand, you were in like this most beautiful place, and on the other hand, you were on edge because you never knew when he might come out of the room and like just point at you and tell you why you're an idiot and then go back in his room. And of course, when you thought about it, he was always right. That was the hard part. He was always right. You couldn't lie to him, and that was one of these things that we took really early. Well, you can't lie, so don't even think of lying to him. He knows you're lying. So, but these kind of experiences were so helpful to have met someone who could, I think he saw what I might be. I think he saw this potential in me, and he was trying to get me to want to go there,
Mm.
but I didn't want to at that time. I had a life I wanted to live and these things I wanted to accomplish, and it was a fight to finally maybe say, okay, I'll give in. I'll give in.
What was he, do you think, trying to find within you then that maybe you didn't want to go there, but he saw in you that maybe you didn't want to go there?
He told me once, and he didn't have a great command of English because, of course, he was Korean, so he didn't speak English much. But when he did speak, he was using words very cautiously. He told me once, he said, I think you can be a holy man, which is the last thing I wanted to hear, right? I don't want to be living like some monk and some whatever. I want to be an author. I want to make
Mm.
documentaries. I want to do this. Maybe I still want to coach some hockey teams. I was a stand-up comedian at that time. I've got some comedy things I don't want to be that. But of course, he was describing a difference. He was describing something else, right? He was just describing becoming someone who knows the truth of what you are, but he framed it in such a way that my ego would reject it, that my ego would. So right away, even though he's giving me a compliment, the inner part of the howdy thing is fighting it right away, bashing it completely. Um, and like I say, he knew another little story. He came out of his room one time. I was with him for about 4 or 5 months. And he came out of his room. I was sitting at the table with a good friend, and he comes and he sits down, doesn't talk to us very often, and he starts telling stories. Stories about an old man with his hip problem, and then French women, and then Korean restaurants that he likes to eat in, and this time he had to help somebody change a tire, and then he got up and went back in his room. And my friend just said, "Did you get all that? What do you mean?" He just told you your complete life. He told you everything about those stories are not stories about him. They were stories about you. Everything he just said was like the totality of you. And I was like, really? The next time that happened, I shut off my mind from listening to stories and I was like, I'm going to feel what he's talking to me now. I'm going to like literally meet him on a feeling level. And then, oh, wow, he's revealing. It sounds like he's talking about Korean restaurants. No, he's talking about me. He's talking about the whole way I'm built. And it was, again, being able to experience these things were one way or another part of how I got here. There's no way. The same thing with the native Indian teachers that I had with the medicine people that I was with. There's the things that they opened, the doorways that they opened for me were. I'm still so thankful for what they did, because they very rarely, of course, take white people in for discussions. So the fact that I was even able to be there for some period of time, I didn't realize even how lucky I was till years later. But again, so many of the little things they showed me, little teachings they presented, became a part of my willingness to let go of false.
Mm.
That's the path, everybody. That if I want me to simplify the path for you, here it is. Let go of false. That's
Yeah.
it. And false, you start with anything. Like, hey, I shouldn't have 4 cups of coffee in the morning. That's not good for starting my day. That's false. So you drop it and you just move on to something else. What's false? Drop it. What's false? Drop it. Eventually, you will come to one thing that no matter how hard you try to drop it, you can't.
Mm.
And you realize, oh, that's the truth. That's what's true. And so it's you're not walking towards a truth that you think you know what it is. You're actually walking backward into the unknown, letting go of everything that you see that is not actually true until you bump into that one thing. And I'll just make this comment and then finally let John talk again.
That's good.
Is that's where a lot of also people get into trouble. People who are really working hard, and usually it's in an area like I worked on history for a long time, right? I worked on digging through the lies of history. Some might government, science, various things about this world. But they get to the point where they've seen it's false. It's false. This whole area is false, but they don't drop it and move on to something else. They stick with it, even though they know it's all false. Like something, how come you don't write much more about history? Because I know it's false.
Mm.
Well, why don't you write some more stuff? It's false. I don't need to. I already saw that it's false. I don't need to spend more time on it. And that's one of the big challenges. It's knowing when you've done enough work in any area to say, I can let go of this now because there's other things I have to look at that might be
Mm.
false that I have to let go of. So it's also an important part is knowing when you've done enough, when it's time to stop, when it's time to let it go, so you can move on to something else. You've moved to the next step back, deeper and deeper and deeper. That's really, really important to get comfortable with. There's a time to stop whatever it is you're working on.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. So on that theme then, I mean, if we're in this false matrix, like Neo was in, or John Anderson, whatever his name was, isn't everything within this realm false then, just by definition, or like, how would you know what's true or not? I mean, um,
Yeah, you have to test it,
right.
right? Like literally, if someone says, well, the table's true, prove it. I had the experiences. I tested reality for 8 years.
Mm.
That's kind of what the combination of Mr. Park and the native teachers were giving me. They were giving me exercises to literally test reality.
Hmm.
It got to the point where I actually had to hold on to chairs because I wasn't sure it would still be there when I sat down. That is how transparent reality became. Another story that I had like that was I was sitting with my girlfriend at the time, and I just said, "Oh, your sister's coming over." What? Like we were just watching TV, right? I said, "Your sister's coming over." All of a sudden, there's a knock at the door. She opens the door. Of course, her sister's there. And she, how did you know my sister was coming? Well, I saw her drive up. She parked right, in the parking lot there, and she walked up. She's like, "Howdy, that's a wall." For me at that time, the wall literally didn't exist. It was like the TV was on and I was seeing directly outside. And it wasn't until she said that the wall reformed and there was a wall again. That's what reality was like for me for a while. It was really strange.
Oh, wow.
And just so everyone knows, none of my teachers ever wanted me to touch a drug I never did it once in my life. They wanted me to have these depths of experiences through the manipulation of awareness, through the manipulation of my energy, and through the centering of various practices, so that you were always in control whenever there was an experience that was going to happen. But so for me, there's a way to, just like you can test yourself, self-definition, there's the other side of it, which is testing the matrix, testing reality. Is it what you think it is? Can you prove whatever it is you believe about this place? Can you prove it? And that's the weird part. If you try to prove it, you can't.
Mm.
It's not like you can find out what's true. It's just you break through. It's like the history is a great example. Like if I go through anything about history, like I wrote about the world fairs, right, in that one book
Mm.
a while back. Well, I could show what's not true about the world fairs. I could show that the story of the world fairs is obviously a lie. It's obviously not true, but I can't possibly tell you what is true because there's no possible thesis that I could then, without a time machine, to literally go back and with a video camera and prove it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm back in 1885 and look at, without that kind of proof, it's just a thesis, but you can't prove what's not true.
Mm.
And that's part of, like, again, it's letting go of false. You don't find truth just because you drop false. What happens is another thing that you've been holding on to as a concept or an idea you've let go of. Again, that's why people don't want to do too much work or go into too much depth, because every time you drop something, it's not like something replaces it. It's just this thing goes away and your foundation gets a little more shakier, a little more shakier, a little more shakier. And it can be unnerving because those beliefs, whatever they are, from this is a table, that's part of our structure of everything of how we function here. And if we start taking some of those away, it can get really strange. And again, I was really thankful to have the people that I did around me because they were able to remind me it's okay that it's getting strange. That's kind of what it's like. Just keep us updated on how it goes. Oh,
Mm.
okay. So I didn't feel worried. It was strange, but I wasn't worried about it because they weren't worried about it. They were kind of like, keep going. Good
Right.
stuff.
Yes, there's no.
Yeah.
It's the process. And there's no real end point with it. It's just like layers of the onion just coming off, but necessarily there won't be any kind of place where you finish up. It's just a constant process of subtracting.
Oh no, there is a place you finish. Oh yes.
Okay. All
Like I
right.
said, eventually you come to something that you can't drop.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't. It's like you try everything you can to say this is false, and it's like it's not. And for almost everyone that's happened to, if you read some of the honest accounts, not the ones who are writing in such a way to make you like them or buy their book, they'll always tell you, when I found truth, it was never what I expected it would be. Because if it's what you if you find truth and it's exactly what you thought it was, then you can still never trust it, because how do you know you didn't just manifest your deepest wishes or your deepest
Yeah.
desires? But if eventually you get to something, it's like, I can't believe it's this. Like, of all the things I would have guessed, couldn't have been this. Then you're more likely to have actually found it, because then at least I wasn't trying to make that happen. I was so the better you can have no idea of what truth actually is, what the totality is, that it's a total question mark, it's the total
Mm.
unknown, then I think there's a better likelihood you can get to it, because then you're not fighting certain things that it's got to be this, it's got to be
Yeah.
packaged like this, it's got
Yeah.
to look this way. So I know this is all it's kind of sounding a little guru-like, or but I don't mean it like that. It's
Yeah.
there. There's a it, it's a these are messages or pointers based on the kind of things that were shared with me and the way that I experienced my life, that I'm just like they get shared out with everyone else, as a way of kind of, because you kind of got to always repackage your journey the way you need to live it. Like, you would never want to live your life and go through the exercises I did. That wouldn't be right for other people. You've got to find your way through it. You hear what others did, you test, well, maybe this, maybe this. No, that's not for me. This is for me. And you kind of have to build your own pathway. So that's why it's better to get sort of pointers or directional ideas, and then you yourself build your own little walkway as to how you're going to go in that direction to check out what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've got my own body of work that I do, and I call it social artists. Everyone's their own artist. no two artists are ever the same, but you can learn the principles of art and then develop your own style, your own path, your own way of doing it. I think that's what you're saying here.
Right.
But when you talk
Kind of
about
like, yeah.
truth, I mean, but you can still find truth within this fake simulation, can you? Or once you've found truth, you will pop back into the pleroma or the original reality, no?
It's a good question because the challenge is, of course, is is we're fighting the belief right from the beginning that this is important, or that this is a realm that the stage is the only thing that matters. That's matter. Matter is the only thing that matters. That's how we are presented. And so that it's a very challenging thing to have to begin chopping away to saying maybe it doesn't, and I'm not saying that it doesn't matter at all, but maybe instead of like 100% of attention, maybe it needs 10 or 15% of our attention. So if that's true, where does the 85% that used to go there, where should that be going? So that's kind of the message that I would answer that question with. It just becomes a how do you turn how do you turn this questioning or this looking for something deeper, especially once you get to the point like when you start to say it's a trap.
Mm.
Because it's weird. It's a trap, but it's not a trap, right? It is a trap
Yeah.
from the standpoint of the way we've been conditioned and what we believe ourselves to be and how we've trained to think and the constant cycle of everything, trap. And at the same time, well, the divine spark actually cannot be trapped. It's only trapped because it's been tricked. Once it untricks itself, it can no longer be trapped. So it's this bizarre dual-sided nature to this work, and both sides have to be seen clearly. And you'll notice this, I'm sure, very well. Somebody will be very good presenting all of this stuff, but they'll forget this. Or somebody will be good at all this, but they don't talk about this. Like if I try to go and talk to a lot of the soul trap community, I would get as soon as I talk about emptiness and nothingness, and well, actually there is no trap. They get upset by that. And if I went the other way, say I went to an Advaita or Zen conference and started talking about nothingness, they'd be great on that. And as soon as I say, well, yeah, but it's also a trap. You're also, you're stuck in a reincarnation cycle that's demonic beings are eating your energy. They would get very upset with me. But I fought this for a long time. That was part of my illness. My illness was I had both of these realizations 20 years ago, but black and white thinking, it was only one of them must be true. Both of them, they're opposite. How can two opposites be true? So I was fighting constantly. Which one am I going to accept? Which one am I going to say? And 3 or 4 years ago, finally, I realized they're both true.
Mm.
Both sides of them are equally true. And actually, our job isn't no much to accept one or the other. It's how can we place ourselves between both of them? How do we put ourselves in that magnetic power of betweenness, between both of those realizations, and literally be touching lightly both of them while still being in the middle? Once I realized that that's the pathway,
Mm.
again, things got much more simple.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I was alluding to that earlier when I said we're fullness and emptiness together and with the individual and with the collective all together. Yeah, I love that. I think that's probably the deepest truth that I've come to anyway in my life.
That's the power for anything
Yeah,
is in the betweenness,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
When you have two magnets,
yeah.
and if you put them whatever distance apart, that exact midpoint, you can place a piece of metal and it will be suspended indefinitely as long as those magnets don't move. That's the power point. But as soon as we shift from any little bit of duality, one side or the other, we're off that power point. It's how do we keep ourselves in that unbelievably still point where both opposites are accepted and seen, and yet they're both negated, and it's like and you're just in that between part. It is the it is the task of a lifetime.
Would, if that's the case, then wouldn't it be worthwhile instead of because you refer to this as a prison matrix, a prison planet, is to be in the betweenness of that plus this is a heaven realm as well then.
Yes. But the problem is if you speak like that to the population, because the population, almost everybody is here.
So you're taking them on a journey, but ultimately it is both. But you
I'm
have to
taking him
lead
on
them
I'm
through. Yeah,
taking
I
it
get
on the
it. Yeah,
journey to have to see here's where you are now.
yeah,
You have to get out of the pit that you're in
got you. Yeah,
because everybody wants to just immediately get out of the pit and go to the heaven side. Oh
yeah.
yeah, and that's
I'm
and there's
with
a
you.
lot of promises there as opposed to no, actually you've got to examine the pit first. You've got to get to know the pit really, really well. You've got to get to know the thing that's in the pit. And then once you're actually out of the pit, now you can begin to push that aside and begin to see what's on the other side of it. And so like so that's what I was talking about earlier. It seems like a very negative process because you have to actually see those distort. You can't just rip the wall away. You have to see it. You have to like in a sense own it and know it before it can finally be dissolved. And that's the part no one really wants to do. They want to get rid of the wall as long as I don't have to see and experience it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's the
It's
new age trap. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I see why you did it now. I can see why you did the first edition, which was exit the cave, then empty the cave. You're taking them on that journey, and you have
right.
to show them one and then the contrast first in that order.
Yeah, if I had,
Yeah,
thank you for presenting because if I tried to do both right from the
yeah,
beginning, I would
yeah.
have confused everybody right from the, and I thought this needs to be seen really, and I'm not the first one to be presenting this material, right? Like Wayne Bush, he did a great job with Tricked by the Light. Some other people were starting to present this, and it's only been in the last 4 or 5 years that it began to be presented kind of in a little bit of the package that it is. And I thought the timing is good to I've kind of known it in my own way through the study of the ancient Egypt and the Mayans and their mythology and whatnot. But I realized, okay, this needs to be explained, and it needs to be explained in really clear, documented kind of terms. The whole, what is the cave? How is it structured? What is it really built to do? Get honest about that. And then I said, once I got through that part of it, yeah, okay, now if you want to follow and you want to continue, now we're going to talk about getting out of the pit. You got to, but step one was seeing the pit.
That's it. Yeah,
Step two is getting out of the pit. There will probably be a third book, which will be totally discussing the leaving of the pit completely.
wow. Yeah, the trilogy, that'd be amazing. Yeah, completing the whole process. But you have to take those steps. You can't jump ahead, is what you're saying.
Mm-mm.
Because people need to see
No.
the distortion before they realize there's something more
Yeah,
beautiful on the other side. But if you try and take them to that beautiful side first, then they're not able to navigate and negotiate what
right.
they got in front of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
love
At
that.
least that's how I felt when I sat down and started putting this project together was how you can't do it all at once. So what's the process? What's the laying out principle? And really Falling for Truth, the book that came out well 6 years ago now, because that book is the story of all the practices and the work I did to test reality, the fall in the canyon. So it's like a foundational book to all of this because it's saying, here's what I did. If you're wondering, well, what did I do for 8 years when I was doing all this stuff?
Mm.
Here's the book. This is what I did, as a sort of idea of maybe some of this you want to try too. So they kind of, yeah, it's sort of, I can see now they're kind of being built one on the other. And hopefully a few people do get some value out of it and that there's something
Mm.
useful to it. And if somebody buys it and you feel you didn't, that's okay. Because just put it aside. In a year from now, you might pick it up again and it might be a totally different read.
Yeah, I love that. It's like it's a non-linear, I wouldn't say solution, 'cause that's not the right word here, but it's a non-linear process, but you've almost got to take them on a linear process to let go of the linear process to understand the
Mm.
non-linear reality in a way. It's kind of like
Yeah.
that.
Again, you're both, right? There's
Yeah, yeah,
linear work, there's non-linear work.
yeah.
And this again, how can you learn to be in that swing point and that between point where you're touching both when needs to be and at times neither? It's this not trying to be a Buddhist and be in this really happy place in the middle of two extremes. You're literally trying to place yourself in stillness. You're literally trying to place yourself in that awareness that something on the edges can't disturb.
Mm,
That's that's part of what's going on. I like to use the Faith Mind Sutra, which to me is one of the greatest texts ever produced. It's only like 4 pages long. It's like literally the simplest, but it's like, wow. And I read it every couple of days as a reminder of like, oh yeah, middle, right here.
What's the mantra there? What's the line?
Oh, it could be anything. Like literally it's the whole 4 pages of the
Oh,
text, whatever it's, but it's basically like it's saying like if you have preferences, then already the reality has you.
mm,
As soon as you have a concern for either love or hate, Matrix has you. It's that kind of thinking, right? Which is, of course, if you can be in the still point of actually, I'm not interested in either of them, because we live a life where I want this and I don't want that, and we're fighting. It's a constant fight the whole time. And for a Cathar, right, the group of southern France that no one really knows anything about, who were murdered by the Church of Rome, their focus was, I'm rejecting everything. Their focus was to sit in what they called the true Christ. I'm going to sit in Christ, and all of this stuff just doesn't matter if you're in this, using a their metaphor, right?
mm,
Um, so
yeah, I love that.
that's symbolically that would be part of it. Like if you were a Buddhist, then you would do the opposite. Well, I'm just going to sit in this Buddha space, not in the this or this space. They the world's insane. It can do what it wants. And the problem is even the good stuff is insane. That's what people don't realize. The love stuff, the happy stuff, the sitting by the lake, and I love to sit by the lake. I love when people are nice to me, and
Mhm.
but I know it's also a trick. It's a trick. It's part of the distortion trick to keep me focused out there, because eventually, give it a day, give it a couple of days, the universe will throw something shitty back at you, and
Mm,
and then and you're rushing to try to, how do I get back to the happy place, as opposed to either is fine. It's just that's the way the reality is working, and I'm not gonna. I prefer one to another, but it's okay if that's not the way it is. It doesn't have to.
yeah,
I'm not trying to shape reality to be a particular way. I'm allowing reality to be the way it wants to be, while meeting it from a still place of just I'm meeting it as this being simply.
yeah,
And but again, that doesn't mean you reject it. To me, Schopenhauer came up because he's one of the first to present the world as a pit of suffering, right? And but his reaction to it was very Buddhist. It was very much to say, react to the world with empathy. Recognize that everything and everyone around you is suffering one way or another, either now or in the past or in the future. So when you recognize that we're all beings of suffering, you can have tremendous empathy. Not that I need to fix it. That's compassion, right? Compassion says you're suffering and we need to fix you. Empathy is saying, boy, we're both in a suffering place and I really wish you well. Or it's so hard to describe real empathy, but to me, that's one of the most important parts of this pathway is to the more I've learned what a suffering place this is, my empathy level has just grown for birds, for trees, for anything. It's just like I know I love spending time with this tree. It's a beautiful thing. I'm having a wonderful experience, but I also know the tree is suffering. The tree in its own way is suffering, and in many cases, I try to say in my own way, what can I do for you? I don't like to just go into nature and sit down and what can I get from nature, right? From my native tradition, it was always first, what can I give to you? What do you need? Is there anything I can do for you? Because I know you're having a tough time too. So start there. What can I do for you? And like any good friendship, if you start acting like that with a tree or a rock or the nature or whatever, just like a person, you open that. What can I do for you? Now the person's going to respond, maybe nothing. What can I do for you back? And all of a sudden, that's how this opens up. That's how you open up at a power spot or an ancient site. It's
Mm,
always you go there first. What can I do for you? What can I give you? How can I help you? As opposed to what's in it for me. And as you make that shift, then you make friends with these things. You actually start having friendships with the reality around you. But friendships recognizing that we both had a tough time. It's a rough, and in many cases, okay, I've had a difficult life,
mm,
but it's still 5 out of 10 compared to there's many people I know, they're 9, 10 out of 10. Like just they've lived horror. Like they've just lived horrible, horrific experiences. And I know that's a huge part of this place. And I don't ever forget it. And for me, as long as one being is still suffering in this reality, then it's still not a reality I want to be in.
mm. Love that. Love that. Howdy, that was amazing. We we packed so much into that, so much depth, so much wisdom, so much insight, different perspectives on it. I really appreciate your time. And I'm going to circle back. No, I'm going to spiral back because we're
Yeah.
a different level
First,
of.
and I also want to say I've been really enjoyed the conversation, John.
Yeah.
You're very easy to talk to, and you're very easy to converse with, and the way you do these and ask questions. So I just want to also acknowledge that. Thank you for having this interview and the way you did it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I felt really kind of, it's funny because when I do conversations, sometimes I feel as though I have to really force it and lead it. With you, I felt very kind of, it felt energetically held throughout and it felt like very easy and I felt nourished through the whole thing. And that's when I know it's a really
Mm.
good episode, good show, good conversation. So credit to you, my man. I would like to circle back, spiral back to the books again, encourage people to buy them. So would we be still encouraging people to get the first edition and then on to the second, or should we get them to start with the second one?
Oh yeah, I think it's probably if someone's really interested, really, unless you've really dug into this material and listened to if you've listened to a lot of Mark at Forever Conscious, if you've listened to Tony Sayers, if you've listened to a lot of these people, detail, maybe you don't need Exit the Cave, but it's still a valuable foundation text of kind of here's where I'm coming from. This is where I see things and how I'm relating to Cathars and Gnostics and etc. And then into Empty the Cave. And for those interested in getting the book, um, yeah, you can go to my website. There's free chapters on the website of all the books. You can get a look at it. And the first chapter of all the books, I wrote it specifically to, in some way, stand alone. So it should give you an idea what the whole book's going to be about just from the first chapter. And then you can buy them wherever you feel like, whatever source you like. And I have PDF files available on the website because some people in certain parts of the world, it's just difficult to buy books, actually. It's difficult to even get them shipped and ordered to where you are. So because of that, I do have, and just then it's a fairly cheap purchase. You don't have to pay for shipping. So that's available as well. But I like having an actual book in my hand.
Oh, hold it up
Part
to
of
the
the
camera
reason,
because then
yeah,
yeah, there we go.
part of the reason being is, well, it might be backwards in the screen, but um, is that the digital world, part of the way the simulation is going to end soon and move to the next one, where it's going to become everything will be digital, everything will be controlled,
Mm,
and everything can be manipulated. At least having a hard copy of a book means you hold on to the potentiality longer. So I'm saying this here, not just about my books,
mm,
any book. If you think there's a material that you think is important, that something like 10 years from now you'd like maybe to access, you should have that in book form
mm,
because there's no guarantee you're going to be able to access that if you don't actually have the book yourself
mm.
in your possession.
Absolutely. I know that from my podcast. Episodes get deleted by YouTube, so it's almost like it feels sometimes infertile, to
Right.
create content this way. So books are the way to go to have something more tangible. Howdy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time, my man. Really, really enjoyed it. I'd love to bring you on maybe if you write another book, in a few months' time, as you kind of quite prolific book writer. So I'd love to plug what your next insights are doing, in that point in the future. So just from everyone here, thank you so much, Howdy. Really, really appreciate the deep chat, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Thanks again, John. Appreciate it.
Cheers, my man.